Okay, so this is my second video from yesterday, or the day before, part 2 of my life story. I left off where they give me an ultimatum to change or be buried, and let me back on the compound. Well, I got back on the compound and I was like, okay, change. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I mean, up to that point, all I knew was how I was. I mean, I had been in Marion to begin with. Then I was on like 3 other compounds very briefly, and now back at this particular prison that I was in. My whole life was centered around just being crazy, you know. I was on average anywhere between 200 and 215 pounds of bull strength craziness. I would go out on the weight piles when they had a weight pile where I was, and I would do dips with my weight plus 7 45-pound plates between my legs. I mean, I'd have to waddle to get over there, but you know, I could get myself up and do reps with it. So that's what I was centered around, you know, being crazy. That was my reputation, being crazy, being strong, you know, everything else. So I was like, change. Okay, I promised, so I've got to come up with a way. And I had read hundreds of different self-help books and self-change books and all these kind of things, and all of them were lacking in one form or another. So I sat down and I thought, okay, well, change starts in your head, starts in your mind, and then you have to put it into practice. Okay, that's an easy thing. Okay, but what do I need to change? I mean, I need to change not being so violent and not being so brutal. Because, you see, I didn't just fight. No. I would break things on people. I would cripple them if I could. I didn't ever use weapons because I didn't need to. Well, in the prison system anyway. So, you know, I was right out in your face brutal. And that's odd for a lot of people because, you know, they'll use weapons or something because deep down inside, they're afraid. They're afraid of being hurt. They're afraid of, you know, this kind of stuff. I didn't have that fear. So, since I didn't have fear of anything, and since I really didn't have a conscience about it, how was I going to do this? What did I need to change other than just getting angry? So I sat down and I thought, you know what? Where does this all stem from? There's got to be a baseline for it, and then it perpetuated itself into who I am now. So I wrote out my earliest memory And when I started getting angry, or angrier than normal people do, I guess. And I wrote out all the things that I had done since then, things that had been done to me, everything else, and I had a long list. Long list. And I took that list. I was like, okay. Now, granted, I'm an adult by now. If I could go back as an adult and talk to this child, what would I change about that circumstance and about how that child reacted to that circumstance? And I wrote down for each of the different things that I could remember that I had written down, how I reacted at the time, if I could remember, how I could have reacted, and then how I should have reacted to the best of my ability. And I started breaking that stuff down. Well, then I took all that and I was like, okay, so how does this help me? How can I bring this stuff that I just did into a changing format to help me? Not only that, but I knew that their underlying thing was not just to get me out of the shoe and change me, because deep down inside where nobody can see, they really didn't give a shit. For the most part. Flint probably did. The captain probably did because he really liked me. SIS? Nah. He didn't care. He was just going along with it. The warden maybe because, you know, he was old school. He knew how things happen in the prison system. But deep down inside, they were all hoping that I'd use this change of my own to help other people change. By example. Because like Flint told me, you know, you like helping people, but I wouldn't accept your help because you're a freaking mess. You can't change yourself. So I took everything that I'd written down, everything I'd formulated, and I took it to the psychology department, because I would go in there every so often and read their psych books and talk to one of the psychiatrists or psychologists, and we didn't do the whole psychoanalyst type thing. We just talked like normal people. And I respected him because he didn't try to psychoanalyze. I hated that. I still do, actually. Just ask me what you want to know and I'll tell you. And I took it to him and he's like, oh, okay, you know, this might work, but you need to do it. So I went from that and I went to some of my buddies and I was like, okay, here's what I am trying to do. Will you guys be guinea pigs? You know? And they're like, sure, you know, okay. Guinea pigs. We can do that, you know. Hold on 1 second, I gotta grab my dog. Dixie! Dixie! Come on. So, they're like, okay, well, you know, sure, we'll be guinea pigs. And these guys, you know, some of them had anger problems, like I did, but not as severe. A couple of them had antisocial issues, like I did. Some of them had conscience issues, like I did. Some of them suffered from, you know, depression, anxiety. you know, full spectrum of stuff. And I had them work my system. And little by little, they started changing too. And I had already started the process of changing. I wasn't violent. I'd walk away from situations that I knew I could walk away from. I was lucky though, because I had a reputation which was solid. And when I get mad or angry, my eyes change and my whole demeanor changes. And people notice that. So I was able to use that to get people to back down more often, so I could walk away. But walking away, man, the first 30 times was just so difficult it wasn't even funny. I would end up being so mad that I would go to the weight pile and just kill myself. Or they had a heavy bag, I'd go just wear that thing out. And one of my favorite exercises at the time was taking a heavy medicine ball and having a workout partner of mine just slam it against my stomach or against my sides or whatever. And man, I'd be so angry. He'd be slamming that thing into my stomach or into my side, and I'd be like, harder, harder, harder. And finally, you know, it'd get to the point where I was so worn out, I'd throw up, you know. And it showed me how off kilter I really was. I mean, I was way out there. And up until that point, I just had never realized, or never even cared to realize, how bad I'd gotten. And it was bad, you know. So after I used my buddies as guinea pigs, I got some other people that I knew that had tried to change things about themselves and help them do some stuff. The psychologist that I was just talking about started calling me in to try to help some of the people that he was consistently dealing with, or people that he knew that had wanted to commit suicide or had tried to commit suicide or something like that, you know, talking to those people, trying to get them to, you know, change that thought, that behavior. And finally, the education department, see, the education department had a thing, it's called adult, what was it called? Adult Continuing Education. And what that was is every 90 days they would have these classes that were taught by inmates that had different skill sets. Like somebody that knew about rental properties would teach a course on rental properties. Somebody that had schooling and stuff in blueprint reading would teach a blueprint reading course. You name it. If it was available, people knew about it, you know, someone was probably teaching it. Don't get it messed up. There's a lot of extremely intelligent people in the prison system. Don't get it messed up. Just because they're in prison doesn't make them stupid. In fact, I don't know what the statistics are now, but I know at the time the people that were taking their GEDs and graduated with an 85% higher score per capita than anybody else in the country. I mean, crazy numbers. And these were people that couldn't even read to begin with. And by the time they were done, they were just crushing it. So, don't get it messed up. Criminals, people in prison are not stupid. We just, for whatever reason, we're wired differently than any other people. Or in some cases, you know, crimes of passion or whatever. So anyway, the education department found out about my stuff that I was doing and asked me if I'd be willing to teach a course. So I set up the course work for the 90-day period, and I mean, it's pretty intricate. You got to do it just like you're teaching school for real. You got to do what you're going to do for that week, the next week, the next week, the next week, for the whole 90 days, what kind of tests you're going to have, everything. It's not something that you just go, okay, I'm just going to teach this class and sit in there and just talk. No, not that easy. So I broke it all down and taught the first class. Well, the first night of the class, there's 30 people that joined because you have to sign up. And some of the people that signed up just because of me. You know, they wanted to see if I knew how to teach a course, for one thing, and, you know, because people knew me. I mean, everybody in the prison knew me, all the way from inmate to warden. Everybody knew me. So it wasn't a stretch to go from there to everybody knows that I'm changing. And yeah, some people, you know, that found out that I was changing thought, okay, now he's gotten weak. So, you know, now we're going to try. And luckily, you know, like I said, they didn't go too far with it. And so I sat these guys down and I was like, listen, this is how it is. You're in this class because you want to be here. It's my way. There's no discussion about that. Leave all that other garbage on the compound. If you have a beef with somebody that's in the class because you're a different clique or whatever, yeah, don't bring that mess in here. If you do, it's not going to get pretty. So just come in, learn, take it to heart or not. That's up to you. I can't judge, but you won't cause any kind of mess in my class. I can't have it. That's not this platform. If you don't like that, the door's right there. We don't talk about each other behind our backs. So whatever's said in here, because there's going to be a lot of stuff said, leave it in here. You know, people are going to be talking about their feelings and all this kind of stuff. Leave it in here. Don't go back out on the compound and be like, man, that dude broke down, cried, he's such a... No. I hear that. I'm going to forget about this change thing and I'm going to crush your ass. It's not going to happen. So, first night went good. First week went good. And by the end of the second or third week, I think it was, 5 people dropped my class. And I was like, okay, that's not bad. Well, at the end of the 90 days, I had 8 total people that had dropped my class for one reason or another. And I called that a success, and so did the education department. So they asked me to do another course for another 90 days of different people. So on the side, I was keeping up with the guys that were in my class, helping them continue the change if they wanted to, and having classes kind of out in the yard, you know, stuff like that, get-togethers. We'd do cook-ups, stuff like that together. So I did another 90-day, and there was 40 people in my class that time. Only 2 dropped during that one. So by this time, the warden was starting to sit in on my classes every so often. The captain, the head of SIS, Special Investigative Service, if you didn't remember, some of the other officers, the head of the education department, some of the other teachers, they would join my class every so often. And they would actually take part sometimes. Surprisingly. I mean, you wouldn't think that the warden would be like, yeah, you know, one of my biggest fears is, and spew it out, or family stuff, or whatever. But he did. And so did some of the other officers, actually. Well, it was, I want to say, halfway into my third 90-day course. This guy shows up at my door that night, and he tells me that he's a professor. He's with the captain, and he tells me that he's a professor for Baraboo College in Wisconsin, and he teaches a college course similar to mine, and he wants to sit in on it. He had heard about me from the head of the education department. So I was like, oh, okay, you know. So he sat in on that class, and then he ended up coming in there for the rest of the week. At the end of that week, he had talked to some of the guys that were in the class at that time, and he had talked to some of the guys that had taken my class previously. And he decided that since my coursework and everything was so unique, to him anyway, he was like, you've made this so it fits a whole broad spectrum of different things, and it's so easy to implement. It's so simple, it's almost too simple, but it's effective. And like he said, you know, you can use it for a broad amount of mental health issues instead of just certain ones. Do you mind if I publish a paper on this? I was like, knock yourself out. I mean, but he wanted to publish it in a mental health journal. He's like, no, I want you to actually be part of the paper. And I was like, no, ixnay on that, not having it. Because first of all, I'm not doing this to get attention. I'm doing it because I like doing it. And I gave my word that I'd change, and now that I've changed, I want to help other people. Secondly, I'm in prison. You know, you might not think so, but if you publish something with your name included with my name, it's going to affect you. Because people don't want to hear what a prisoner has to say. They don't want to hear how good this prisoner is doing. and this thing that he came up with and everything, because then it would change their viewpoint maybe, and they don't want that. I know it sounds cynical, but they just don't. I mean, it's just how it is. I took these things are called great courses. They're taught by professors from colleges all around the country, and they're on DVD, and they're actual courses. And if you check them out, they're really awesome. They have everything from A to Z. Well, I sat and I took between 32 and 3,500 hours of these courses, and they're pretty in depth. I mean, one disc might have 14 different sections in it, and there might be anywhere from 8 to 15 or so discs in that coursework. So it's pretty in depth. It's basically like taking college without taking college. And I did 3,500 or 32 to 3,500 hours worth of that stuff, and got certificates in some of it because I contacted the professors and asked them to give me certificates. And all of it was business-based, marketing-based, strategic planning, team building, project management, business startup, advertising, all that kind of stuff. Since I've been out of prison, I haven't gotten to use any of it because nobody will give me a freaking chance. Plain and simple. You have a felony nowadays in this country, your ass out. It doesn't matter unless you have money or connections, or you get really freaking lucky. I almost got really freaking lucky, but my probation officer didn't want me to make more money than him right out of prison, so he screwed it completely up, and it went away. So I might sound cynical, but I'm talking from personal experience. If you have a felony in this country, people will hold it against you for your whole entire freaking life, and that's just how it is. 1 out of maybe 100, if not 1,000 or 5,000 people might give you a chance, but it's probably not going to happen. So people taking college courses and stuff in prison is basically a waste of time. Housing in this country, same thing. If you're a felon, good luck. You got to think outside the box. And on that same thing, since I'm doing that rant, there's a 97% recidivism rate in this country for people coming out of prison. In federal especially, and a lot of the states are the same way. It's because of citizens not giving them freaking jobs. I'm telling you, there's a lot of good people that come out of prison that want to change. They get frustrated because they get their teeth kicked in on job interviews, housing, stuff like that. They get depressed. They start doing drugs and drinking again, and it gets them in trouble. Society has a majority of the freaking blame. Yeah, you have the knuckleheads that come out, don't change, and go right back in like I did. But you have a vast amount of people that get in the system, change themselves, get educated, come out, and get spit on. End of rant. You guys can think for yourselves on that. So anyway, he published the paper, and it did pretty good actually. So I continued doing the classes. I did advanced classes, intermediate classes, all that kind of stuff. And I did that for the rest of the time that I was in. Well, like I just said on the recidivism thing, out of all the people that took my course, I found this out a couple days before I left. The warden gave me the statistics on it because he had actually checked into it. Out of all the people that had taken my course, and by the time my course ended, I had up to 100 people in my class for each 90-day course. So there was a large amount of people in that amount of time. I taught it for several years. Out of all those people, 85 to 87% did not come back to prison. They were able to stay out and keep clean, everything like that. They didn't come back. Shattered the records on everything. There was no other course in the whole prison system that had that kind of numbers. There was a couple that were actually kind of close, but there weren't any that had that kind of numbers. And the ones that did come back came back for ridiculous violations, being 5 minutes late for a parole appointment, not calling their parole officer on time for whatever reason, showing up to work late, they get fired, they got their parole terminated or probation terminated. None of them came back for new charges. It was all just stupid stuff. Some of them actually came back on purpose to get their time done and just be free of all the paper, which I can agree with. So, change is possible. Since I've been out, yes, I've had a lot of ups and downs. Getting jobs, frustrating. Getting housing, frustrating. But I held it in. I was able to deal with it. Previous to that, I wouldn't have even tried. I was able to handle going in for interview after interview, 60 interviews in 2 months. Or, no, take that back, 60 interviews in a month. Didn't get one job. Kept on getting shined on every time. Yeah, you know, you look great. You're definitely, you know, we'll call you. Never did. Housing. I called over 200 housing places and couldn't get an apartment because they don't rent to felons. And I finally went to an interview for a job, and I sat there across from the guy right away. Didn't even let him really say anything, and I was like, okay, here's how I see this going. We're going to have a good interview, and you're going to tell me I'm going to call you. You have other people to interview. I'm never going to hear from you, so let's just sit here and drink coffee and, you know, just BS. And forget about the interview portion. And he sat there and he looked at me, he's like, is it that bad? I was like, yeah. Honestly, it is. It's that bad. And he's like, okay, well, tell me. You know. So I told him. I told him a little bit about myself, a little bit about my prison time, where I came from, you know, where I was now. I was like, I just want a job. You know. I just want to be productive. But nobody will give me a chance. And I've applied for places like Burger King, you know, McDonald's. It's ridiculous, you know. And he's like, now I understand why you started the interview like that. I sat here like, what the hell is this guy doing? Does he not want to work? You know? And he's like, okay, well, I'm the general manager, so I can technically say you're hired right now, but I want you to talk to my assistant manager first. I was like, okay, you know, at least I have another interview. Because I didn't know whether he was telling me the truth or not. By then I was jaded. I was like, okay, whatever. So I went to the next interview the next day, and it went really good. He already knew about me. Him and the general manager talked. The general manager came up during the end portion of it. He's like, so what do you think? He's like, yeah, let's do it. I got hired, and it was at a place called Noodles and Company. They're considered a fast casual food company. And right away, they, instead of sticking me back in the dishwasher like I had expected, they put me on the front counter dealing with customers coming in on a computer system that I had no clue how to use. They taught me, and I'm really good with people. I'm really well-spoken, stuff like that. By the end of that first 2 days or 3 days, even though I was slow, people preferred using my counter than they did the counter next to me. I had several people compliment my work ethics and stuff and everything, and within the first week it was ridiculous. The point of sales thing that they had was kind of complicated, especially for me. So I had to go from this page to this page to this page to this page to get this, to go back to this for someone's order. And then heaven forbid they want to change something. So it was slow. And I would sit there while I was doing it and joke with these people and talk to them. And one day, it was about a week later, it was during lunchtime, and there was a line of people from my till, my computer thing, to the door. And there was like 3 people in the line next to me on that computer. And the manager kept on telling these people, well, you know, you can move over here. And they're like, no, we'll wait for him. And I kept telling them, I'm like, if you want to eat anytime soon, if you're on lunch break or whatever, form up over here, because it's going to be a minute. And some of them did, because they realized, yeah, you know, time-wise, they had to crush. So the other one stayed in my line. Well, when I wasn't behind the counter,